That red 5-gallon plastic gas can sitting in your garage right now is a leash. You fill it up, believing it buys you independence when the grid goes down or the tractor needs running. The liquid inside begins degrading in exactly 30 days. It turns into a thick varnish that destroys your carburetor and demands constant chemical stabilizers. You are buying a cycle of endless dependency. My name is Noah Miller. For 30 years, I paid the exact same prices and fought the exact same failing engines as everyone else. Dead generator, sputtering tractor, empty tank, price spikes every summer, the constant anxiety of watching the fuel gauge drop while the field remains half-mowed and the storm rolls in. Is this just how it is now? There is a mechanical process, perfected in 1937, that turns dead branches and scrap timber into a combustible vapor. This vapor possesses enough power to run a standard combustion engine at full capacity. The Amish maintained this practice for decades to power heavy machinery completely off the grid. Keep watching and I will show you exactly how to build this precise unit for your own property using common materials. This device remains hidden from the public eye for reasons much deeper than convenience. The physics behind this process happen in your backyard every time you light a campfire. When you burn a log, the yellow flames you see dancing above the wood are actually wood gas igniting. The solid wood itself acts as a dense, heavy storage battery for trapped solar energy. A normal open fire consumes the wood and the gas together in the open air. This rapid consumption wastes the vast majority of the potential energy stored inside the timber. The modern energy industry shifted our focus entirely to liquid petroleum. They designed engines that rely exclusively on a refined, heavily taxed liquid. They built a system that requires a recurring payment just to keep your own property functioning. You experience a constant drain on your wallet. Your equipment sits dead the moment the pumps run dry. You buy the expensive fuel, it degrades in the can. You buy the chemical stabilizer, the carburetor clogs anyway, and you hand your money to the small engine mechanic. The gas station treats your immediate need for power. The underlying condition that creates your total dependency remains completely unchanged. This is the part that took me longest to understand. Think of a traditional coffee percolator. You heat the water, the pressure rises, and it extracts the dark liquid from the grounds. Wood gasification works on the exact same physics. You heat biomass in a restricted oxygen steel chamber. The extreme heat extracts a rich, combustible gas called syngas from the solid wood. You route that gas directly into your engine's air intake. The engine runs exactly as it would on gasoline. Most people stop right here. The ones who keep going achieve absolute fuel independence. The 1989 Federal Emergency Management Agency report on wood gasification outlines this exact process. They document it as a proven, reliable alternative for civilian power generation during severe fuel shortages. FEMA tested it and proved it runs standard agricultural machinery flawlessly. The system filters out the tar and moisture. It leaves a pure vapor that pistons compress and ignite perfectly. Your engine retains its original factory configuration. You simply feed it a different form of vapor. The internal combustion engine only cares about explosive expansion. It runs beautifully on vaporized wood. I thought I understood the mechanics. Then I took a closer look at how the modern fuel supply chain operates, and I realized I had only seen half the picture. Industry executives quietly pushed aside this technology for pure economic survival. A one-time mechanical build using scrap metal eliminates future transactions. That is the entire secret. The modern energy cartel requires a continuous profit margin. I found out by accident. I was in Holmes County, Ohio, looking at a piece of used farm equipment. The farmer had a 30-horsepower engine running a massive belt drive. The engine ran flawlessly using a sealed air intake instead of a traditional liquid fuel line. A simple steel barrel sat bolted to the side, quietly consuming wood chips. I asked him where he bought the fuel to keep that massive engine running all day. He smiled, and pointed at the forest behind his barn. Have you ever noticed how quickly the fuel in your emergency generator turns stale and ruins the carburetor if you leave it sitting? Does your property produce piles of brush, fallen branches, and wood scraps that you spend hours burning just to clear space? Have you ever felt that familiar knot in your stomach watching the price per gallon climb right before a long winter or a major storm? If you answered yes to even one of those, stay right here. You already own the fuel you need to run your equipment. You just require the mechanism to extract it. In a few minutes, I am going to tell you about a specific component that costs about the same as a cup of coffee at a gas station. Most people throw it away or ignore it completely. It is the piece that makes everything else in this method work. This forgotten technique takes ordinary yard waste and converts it directly into reliable horsepower. The Amish preserved it because they demand absolute independence from supply chains outside their control. They look at a dead branch and see a gallon of fuel. You spend your weekends dragging branches to the curb for the city to haul away. You pay a massive premium for liquid fuel just to run the chainsaw that cuts those exact same branches. The irony stares you right in the face. Society conditions us to see wood as a primitive heat source. The physics of gasification prove it serves as a highly refined motor fuel waiting to be unlocked. You possess the raw materials. You just need the map to put them together. Up until now, I laid out the mechanics. What comes next is the exact blueprint of this erased system, and it will permanently change how you look at the trees in your yard. Quick break to subscribe and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss our deep dive into forgotten technologies. I sat at my kitchen table reading that 1989 FEMA report over and over, tracing the simple engineering diagrams of the restricted oxygen steel chamber. The performance data showed a standard agricultural engine running flawlessly on trapped solar energy from scrap timber, leaving me quietly trying to understand how we all forgot this existed. Why did such a revolutionary, cheap fuel disappear from mainstream use? The answer lies not in its failure, but in a deliberate act of suppression that began just years after its invention. The mysterious fuel powering these engines is syngas. You extract this dense vapor directly from raw wood through intense heat. The solid timber breaks down inside a sealed vacuum, releasing pure combustible energy. This vapor runs standard internal combustion engines perfectly. You bypass the liquid fuel system completely. Have you ever noticed the distinct smell of chemical varnish when you open your emergency gas can after 6 months of storage? Does your property generate endless piles of dead branches and fallen oak limbs after every major spring storm? Have you ever pulled the starter cord on your backup generator during a winter power outage only to feel the dead weight of a gummed-up carburetor? If you said yes to even one of those, do not go anywhere. You possess exactly what you need to break this cycle permanently. The raw materials surround your home right now. In a few minutes, I'm going to tell you about something that costs about the same as a cup of coffee. Most people throw it away or never buy it at all. It is the piece that makes everything else work. I will tell you what it is shortly. The current system relies on your continuous frustration. You buy the liquid, you watch it degrade, and you pay a mechanic to fix the resulting damage. You repeat this cycle every single year. You accept this drain on your wallet as a normal cost of property ownership. It represents a massive transfer of wealth from your pocket to the energy sector. Arthur Vance understood this drain better than anyone. Arthur is 68 years old, living on 10 acres of timber in Lebanon, Missouri. I found him standing in his gravel driveway, wiping black sludge off his hands with a red shop rag. He stood over a dead Troy-built riding mower, surrounded by the heavy smell of stale ethanol and ozone. Arthur spent $850 last summer alone, replacing carburetors and purchasing premium liquid fuel. He kept 3 different generators sitting dead in his storage shed. He accumulated 50 gallons of spoiled gasoline, requiring expensive hazardous waste disposal. Meanwhile, his 10 acres of timber dropped hundreds of pounds of heavy oak branches every season. He spent countless hours piling and burning those branches just to clear space. He paid exorbitant prices for liquid fuel to run the chainsaw that cut the wood he was burning for free. The financial bleeding was constant. Arthur felt completely trapped by the maintenance cycle. Every piece of equipment he owned demanded a liquid he could barely afford to store. I handed him a diagram of a downdraft gasifier and explained the basic physics. Arthur dismissed the idea entirely. He folded his heavy arms across his chest and stared at the massive pile of dead oak branches for a long time without saying anything. He looked at me like I had suggested running his tractor on grass clippings. He pointed a grease-stained finger at the heavy steel drive shaft of his mower. He demanded to know how a pile of wet yard waste would generate the explosive force required to turn that heavy mechanical steel. He viewed wood strictly as a primitive heat source for a winter fireplace. The concept of extracting a refined motor fuel from a dead tree branch violated everything he knew about modern engines. I asked him for one afternoon to prove the physics. We gathered the scrap metal from behind his barn. We started cutting the steel right there in the driveway. Most people stop when they face this kind of skepticism. The ones who push through discover a level of independence the modern world tries very hard to keep hidden. The technique relies entirely on a process called downdraft wood gasification. You build a two-stage thermal extractor using common steel containers. Think of a charcoal smoker box sitting inside a heavy barbecue grill. You restrict the oxygen supply. The wood smolders at extreme temperatures and releases a thick, heavy white smoke. That smoke contains massive amounts of hydrogen and carbon monoxide. Both of those gases explode with incredible force when compressed inside an engine cylinder. You begin with one clean 55-gallon heavy steel drum featuring a locking lid. You place one 5-gallon steel bucket directly inside the center of the large drum. This inner bucket serves as your primary combustion hearth. You pack the empty space between the bucket and the outer drum with ordinary wood ash. Wood ash functions as a perfect thermal insulator. It handles temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit easily. You cut a 3-inch hole in the side of the outer drum. You insert exactly 24 inches of heavy black iron plumbing pipe, 2 inches in diameter. This serves as your primary air intake. The engine creates a powerful vacuum as the pistons pump. This vacuum pulls fresh air down through the iron pipe and directly into the hot combustion hearth. The intense heat rips the hydrogen molecules away from the solid wood. The resulting syngas exits the bottom of the drum through a secondary steel pipe. You route this hot gas through a simple cooling radiator. You build this radiator by coiling 10 feet of standard half-inch copper tubing. You must cool the gas. Cold vapor condenses. Condensed vapor packs significantly more explosive power into the engine cylinder. You route the cooled vapor into a standard 5-gallon plastic bucket filled with dry wood chips. The wood chips act as a primary moisture filter. They strip the heavy water vapor out of the gas stream. This brings us to the cheap component I mentioned earlier. You cap the system with a final PVC filter tube. Inside this tube, you pack 3 stainless steel kitchen scrubbing pads. You buy these at any grocery store for $3. The tightly woven stainless steel catches the microscopic wood tar before it reaches your engine manifold. The scrub pad represents the ultimate barrier between a clean engine and a ruined valve. Skipping this $3 component destroys the machine. You face 2 main challenges when operating this system. First, you must manage your fuel moisture. You must use wood dried to below 20% moisture content. You verify this using a standard $20 digital moisture meter from any hardware store. Wet wood creates heavy steam inside the hearth. Steam immediately extinguishes the thermal reaction. You eliminate this problem by storing your fuel chips in a dry shed for 3 weeks prior to use. Second, you worry about damaging your engine. You protect the engine by bypassing the delicate carburetor entirely. You route the filtered syngas directly into the plastic air intake manifold. The engine receives pure vapor. You retain the ability to run liquid fuel simply by disconnecting the vapor hose and reattaching your factory air filter.
The modification remains entirely reversible. Your original equipment stays intact. I watched Arthur assemble the final plumbing connections and tighten the hose clamps. 14 months later, I drove back up that gravel driveway in Lebanon. Arthur spent $0 on liquid fuel during that entire period. He logged 400 continuous hours on his primary backup generator using only dead oak branches. He completely cleared 2 acres of deadfall from his property. He recorded 0 carburetor replacements and 0 engine failures.
His son-in-law, a certified diesel mechanic, drove down from Springfield just to inspect the machinery. He stood in the workshop, staring at the heavy generator running massive power tools off a pile of hickory twigs. He spent an hour tracing the plumbing lines, looking for a hidden gasoline tank. Arthur stood next to the humming engine and smiled. He said, "I threw away every plastic gas can I owned. My wife asked me how I filled the tractor. I told her $50 in scrap metal and a Saturday morning." This single mechanical change triggered a massive shift across his entire property. He stopped buying liquid fuel entirely. He systematically cleared his property of dangerous fire hazards by feeding the dead brush into the gasifier. He collected the leftover biochar from the bottom of the steel drum. He tilled this carbon-rich ash directly into his vegetable garden. His garden yield doubled the following season due to the massive nutrient boost in the soil. Now that you know what it is, the next question is, who stood to lose the most if this became common knowledge? If you're finding this information empowering, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's expose the truth together. I stood in Arthur's workshop listening to that generator hum flawlessly past its 400th hour on dead oak branches, feeling a heavy weight settle in my chest as I calculated the thousands of dollars I had personally wasted on stale gas. I understood right then that this revolutionary vapor disappeared from mainstream use because handing a man a $50 scrap metal blueprint permanently ends his need to purchase commercial fuel. I drove home that same afternoon, gathered my own heavy steel drums, and began cutting the metal to reclaim my independence. The forces against this technology were immense, but one small community quietly kept the flame alive. How did they do it? That red 5-gallon plastic gas can sitting in your garage right now is exactly where we started. But if you follow the mechanical blueprint I just laid out, you will look at that object very differently by next weekend.
Arthur still has his main gas can sitting on a heavy wooden shelf in his workshop. It does not hold liquid fuel anymore. It holds scrap metal fittings and extra hose clamps. It is completely dry inside. He has not unscrewed the yellow cap in over 14 months. The financial leash is permanently broken. When the next major spring storm rolls through and knocks down heavy oak branches across your driveway, your first thought will no longer be about the grueling chore of hauling them away. You will not worry about how much premium liquid you need to buy just to run the chainsaw to cut them up. You will look at that fallen timber and see exactly what it is. You will see a dense battery of stored solar energy, waiting to be dropped into a heavy steel drum and converted into pure horsepower. You stop being a consumer of their refined product.
You become the absolute master of your own. The Amish preserved this 1937 technology because they refused to be tethered to a supply chain they cannot control. But the biggest secret isn't just that they kept it, it's how simple it is to replicate, even today. This was never about gasoline. It was about what was taken from you and how simple it is to take it back. The modern energy industry built a massive system designed to keep you returning to the pump, paying whatever price they demand, just to maintain the property you already own. You have the ability to step completely outside that system using scrap metal and dead wood. I want you to go down to the comments right now and tell me exactly which piece of equipment or dead engine you have been fighting the longest. I am not asking to satisfy an algorithm. I am asking because I read those answers to determine exactly which mechanical system we dismantle and rebuild in the next video. We are figuring this out together, one machine at a time. That red plastic gas can is no longer a leash. It is just an empty piece of plastic. You generate your own power now. For more untold stories of self-reliance and hidden innovations, check out our playlist on forgotten technologies. I hesitated to publish this blueprint,
Not because the steel drum build is complicated, but because once you realize any ordinary person can extract engine fuel from dead branches in a single afternoon, you can never look at your monthly bills the same way again. I am handing you these exact measurements today because I remember exactly what it feels like to stand in a freezing garage, staring at a dead generator, realizing no one is coming to help. The power to escape dependency has always been within reach. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge?